Welcome, my bountiful friends. Climb on board, check into your sleeping coach, and order your meal for dinner in the dining car. But whatever you do, double and triple check the identity of everyone around you. Because we're going to be delving deep into Agatha Christie's crime classic, Murder on the Orient Express. This book is centered on one man's fate catching up to him, and a Belgian detective's fastidious investigation into the aftermath. Today, I'll be diving deep into the novel and looking at its history and development, its style and its impact on literature and culture. Beware of spoilers, for there will be stalking this narrative like trained assassins, and I will be waxing lyrical with my own subjective musings. You have been warned. Agatha Christie was born in Torquay, which is a seaside town in Devon, England. She was known as the Queen of Crime and originated two of the most famous investigator characters ever, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. She had a passion for archaeology, which was inspired by her travels to the Middle East, which in turn influenced the exotic settings in many of her novels. Murder on the Orient Express was first published in 1934 and is considered one of her greatest works. The novel's origins and development were shaped by Christie's personal experiences, historical events, and the evolution of the detective fiction genre. Christie drew inspiration for the novel from multiple real-life sources. The most significant was the Lindbergh kidnapping case of 1932, in which the world-famous aviator, inventor and explorer Charles Lindbergh was the victim of a most heinous crime. His infant son was kidnapped and later found dead. This tragic crime captivated the world at the time and influenced Christie's plot, particularly the backstory of Daisy Armstrong, a fictional child whose kidnapping and murder drives the novel's revenge motive. Additionally, the novel's setting was inspired by Christie's own travels aboard the Orient Express, a luxury train that ran from Paris to Istanbul. In the early 30s, Christie travelled extensively in and around the Middle East and became fascinated by the region. On one such journey, she found herself stranded on the Orient Express due to a snowdrift, an event she later incorporated into the novel. By the early 30s, Christie was already a best-selling author, known for her ingenious plots and the notable detective character Poirot. So getting her latest novel into print was not a challenge for her. Murder on the Orient Express was first serialised in 1933 in the UK's Saturday Evening Post, before being published as a complete novel in 1934. The US printed edition of the same year was bizarrely retitled to the far less compelling Murder in the Calais Coach, as the Orient Express often terminated in the French port for British travellers, rather than continuing all the way to Istanbul. Fortunately, this madness was quickly remedied and the far better title became the global standard. This book has a lot of characters, and perhaps one of the challenges for the reader is remembering who everyone is. But at the top of the list is Hercule Poirot, the famous Belgian detective and protagonist of the novel. He is travelling on the Orient Express and is called upon to solve the murder. He also possesses a magnificent moustache. Monsieur Bouc is a director of the Compagnie Internationale des Wagons and an old friend of Poirot. He helps oversee the investigation, a kind of Dr. Watson character, if you will. He also has a fantastic moustache, but it's not as good as Poirot's. Dr. Constantine is a Greek doctor who examines the murder victim and assists Poirot with forensic insights. His moustache is ineffectual. The this is a bad man. We know this because he has no moustache. He is in fact both the victim and the villain of the novel. His name is Samuel Ratchet, or rather, actually Cassetti. He's an American businessman who is later revealed to be a criminal responsible for the infamous Daisy Armstrong kidnapping case. Hector McQueen is Ratchet/Cassetti's secretary. He's trying to bluff his boss and align with him by not having a moustache. But in fact, he harbours a strong hatred for Ratchet because he has a personal connection to the Armstrong family. Edward Henry Masterman is Ratchet's/Cassetti's British valet. Reserved and polite, but also involved in the case, having worked for the Armstrongs. There's a bit of a theme developing here. Pierre Michel is the French conductor of the Orient Express. He has a personal connection to the Armstrong case, like everyone else. Princess Dragomirov is a Russian aristocrat who was a close friend of Daisy Armstrong's grandmother. We now have Mary Debenham, a composed Englishwoman who was Daisy's governess, and like all the female characters, flawed in the fact that she does not have a moustache, which makes her look suspicious throughout the story. We're back onto more solid ground now, because this is Colonel Arbuthnot, a British officer and also a close friend of Daisy's father. And this delight is Countess Andreni, travelling with her husband, who is actually Daisy Armstrong's aunt. Because basically the entire world is either related to Daisy or knows Daisy. There's also an even more extensive cast, who I don't have pictures for. There's Antonio Foscarelli, an Italian businessman who was the Armstrongs' family chauffeur. There's Greta Olsson, a Swedish missionary who was Daisy's nurse. There's Hildegard Schmidt, a maid who was once the Armstrongs' cook. And then there's Cyrus Hardman, an American detective who had loved Daisy's former nurse, who had committed suicide after being falsely accused of the crime. At which point I'm forced to ask, is there anyone in any country who did not know Daisy or her family? The novel begins with Hercule Poirot travelling from Istanbul to London aboard the Orient Express, a prestigious train filled with an eclectic mix of passengers. Shortly after the journey begins, Poirot is approached by a wealthy American businessman named Samuel Ratchet, who claims his life is in danger and offers Poirot money to protect him. Poirot, however, rudely tells him that he does not like the man, he finds him unpleasant, and he refuses the job. That night, the train becomes stuck due to heavy snowfall in Yugoslavia. During the same night, Ratchet is found brutally stabbed to death in his compartment, seemingly locked from the inside. Poirot is duly called to investigate, and he begins to interview the passengers and examine the evidence. He discovers that Ratchet was a pseudonym, and the victim was actually called Cassetti, and was a notorious American criminal who had kidnapped and murdered Daisy Armstrong, a young child from a wealthy family, several years earlier. The Armstrong family tragedy had led to several more deaths, including Daisy's devastated mother, who died in childbirth, and her grieving father, who took his own life. Poirot quickly realises that Ratchet's murder must be an act of revenge. As he interviews the passengers, Poirot notes that almost everyone on board has some connection to the Armstrong case, regardless of where they're actually from. Slowly he pieces together the truth. The big reveal is they all did it. All 12 of the suspects participated in the murder, each taking turns stabbing Ratchet in a carefully orchestrated plan. They all had a deep hatred for him and sought justice for Daisy. Poirot presents two possible solutions to the case. Number 1, a lone assassin boarded the train and killed Ratchet before escaping. Or, option number 2, the murder was carried out by all 12 passengers in a collective act of vengeance. Monsieur Bouc, a director of the railway, decides to accept the first solution, allowing the passengers to go free. Poirot agrees, believing justice has already been served. The novel is written in a crisp, methodical style that reflects the precision of Hercule Poirot's detective work. Christie's prose is clear, concise and highly structured, allowing readers to follow the investigation step by step without unnecessary embellishment. The novel's style is classic Golden Age detective fiction, characterised by logical deduction, misdirection and a cleverly constructed mystery. She employs a third-person, omniscient narrator, but much of the novel is filtered through Poirot's perspective. The storytelling is dialogue-driven, as Poirot meticulously interviews the suspects. This method enhances the novel's suspense and keeps the reader engaged, as each testimony adds another layer to the puzzle. Christie's use of short, sharp chapters and well-paced revelations keeps the mystery moving briskly. Clues are carefully placed, allowing the reader to try and solve the case alongside Poirot, yet her skillful misdirection ensures that the final twist remains surprising. The novel's setting aboard the Orient Express creates a unique and claustrophobic atmosphere. The train, trapped in a snowdrift, serves as a closed environment where no one can escape, a classic locked room mystery setup. This confinement heightens the tension, making every interaction feel charged with suspicion. She also invokes an air of luxury and sophistication, describing the elegant compartments, refined dining, and formal dress of the passengers. However, beneath this refined surface lies a sense of unease. Poirot senses deception at every turn. Ultimately, Murder on the Orient Express masterfully balances a tense, foreboding atmosphere with Christie's signature clarity and wit, making it one of her most immersive and compelling novels. Murder on the Orient Express is more than just a classic detective novel with a hokey setup. It surprisingly packs quite the thematic punch, much more than the average novel in fact. It explores deep themes of justice, morality, deception, fate and societal class divisions. Through Poirot's investigation, Christie challenges traditional notions of crime and punishment, making the novel a compelling reflection on human nature. The first theme is justice and morality. One of the novel's central themes is the nature of justice. Unlike a traditional murder mystery where the culprit is a single criminal, Christie presents a scenario where all 12 suspects are guilty and have acted in unison. They do not kill for personal gain, but as a form of justice, avenging the murder of Daisy Armstrong, an innocent child. Poirot faces a moral dilemma. Should he uphold the law and expose the murderers, or should he allow their carefully planned execution of Ratchet to go unpunished? By choosing the latter, Poirot acknowledges that sometimes the law fails to deliver justice. This challenges the reader to consider whether the murder was justified and whether revenge can ever be morally acceptable. The second theme is revenge as a form of justice. Closely tied to the theme of justice is revenge. The Armstrong family and their loyal friends suffered deeply due to Cassetti's heinous act against an innocent. Feeling abandoned by the legal system, they take matters into their own hands. This raises ethical questions. Is revenge ever justified? Does murder become acceptable if it restores balance to the world? Can a group decision to kill dilute individual guilt? Christie leaves these questions open-ended, making the novel's resolution morally ambiguous. The third theme is deception and appearances. The book is built on deception. Every character, including the victim, is pretending to be someone they are not. The passengers assume false identities, hoping to divert suspicion. The murder itself is staged to mislead Poirot, with stab wounds of varying depth and strength to suggest multiple assailants. Poirot, however, sees through the lies, demonstrating that the truth cannot be buried forever. The novel suggests that while deception may serve a purpose, ultimately truth will out. The fourth theme is class and social divisions. The passengers represent a microcosm of international society, which includes royalty, nobility, servants and professionals. Despite their many differences, they unite for a common cause. What could be argued here is that the book is saying that the whole of international society, or any country's given society, despite its many tensions and rivalries, will always unite in acts of capital punishment when a crime is heinous enough. This is something which I feel would be quite in keeping with the 1930s audience. Murder on the Orient Express is not just about solving a crime, it is about questioning morality, fate and justice. Christie masterfully challenges the reader to consider whether strict legal justice is always right, or whether, in some cases, human emotion and morality takes precedence. Upon its release, Murder on the Orient Express was met with enthusiastic reviews from literary critics. Many praised Christie's ingenuity in crafting a mystery with an unexpected yet entirely logical conclusion. The New York Times called it ingeniously contrived and brilliantly executed, and it applauded Christie's ability to mislead readers while still providing the necessary clues. The Observer praised Hercule Poirot's brilliance, noting that his deduction skills made the mystery feel even more compelling. Many critics particularly admired the closed-circuit setting aboard the Orient Express, which heightened the novel's tension and created a sense of claustrophobia. At the time, detective fiction often relied on a simple whodunit structure with a single culprit. However, Christie broke this convention by revealing that all 12 suspects were guilty, an ending that was both shocking and revolutionary at the time. Some critics even described the twist as a daring gamble that could have backfired but was executed flawlessly. Over the many decades since the novel was first published, it solidified its place as one of Agatha Christie's most famous and enduring works. The novel's clever plotting, unique resolution and psychological depth have made it a landmark in the detective fiction genre. It has had a profound influence on the mystery genre, inspiring countless authors to experiment with alternative structures and multiple perpetrators. It remains one of Christie's most frequently adapted works, with notable film versions in 1974, which starred Albert Finney, and 2017, which starred Kenneth Branagh. Like a lot of peer novels, it has suffered somewhat from the passage of time. Its main appeal is that it is firmly locked into its setting, both in time and geography. It is now very much a period novel. If you want to experience a time when life could be more decadent and cultured, an age of advancing mechanical and scientific wonders, an age when a whole load of lost European countries and empires still existed, then this is an excellent book. There's no shrinkflation here, and when you bought a train ticket, by God you got service. The 30s, of course, was also a time of great hardship for the working masses of the Western world, which doesn't feature here because one of the novel's selling points at the time was probably its escapism. It was also set in and released into an incredibly conservative and, in today's light, morally dodgy society that would be getting its wake-up call in the following decade. The novel was also very much a victim of its own success. It was a novel that set the trend. In the following decades, we've seen just about every permeation of plot twist conceivable in crime fiction. So if one of today's readers was unaware that this was one of the first books to successfully pull off such a feat, then they could quite conceivably feel the final reveal to be cliched or even lame. There's also the fact that the connection of the Avengers seems a bit tenuous. Did the original draft include Daisy's dentist, tailor and postman? I'm surprised the train drivers weren't also in on it. One thing about this book that still hasn't lost its impact over time is the fact that Poirot lets the culprits go scot-free, arguably making himself an accessory after the fact. This is super rare. In crime fiction over the next decades, the investigator may sympathise with the culprit, but they always tend to take the moral high ground and arrest them. If it's a 1950s or 60s novel we're talking about, then it's highly likely that there'll be a whole load of moralising delivered by the protagonist too. In fact, during my research, I did find a few other examples of investigators letting a culprit go free, and they were almost always from the 1930s, which would again indicate that many people operate from quite a different moral compass back then. So, what are your thoughts on this crime classic? Were you generally surprised by the twist? And besides Poirot and his magnificent moustache, who was your favourite character? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading, and remember, if you ever need to plot an elaborate vengeance scheme, make sure it involves a team of 15 international co-defendants, a steam locomotive, a ton of snow, and a laissez-faire Belgian detective. Au revoir.